This is part 2 of section 3.3, and we're going to start with corresponding angles theorem and its converse. So theorem 3.2 is the corresponding angles theorem. If a transversal intersects two parallel lines, then corresponding angles are congruent. So number 10 says complete the statement of theorem 3.2. So if two lines on a transversal form corresponding angles that are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So number 11, use the diagram below. Place the appropriate markings to show that angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. So we use arcs on our angles to show that they're congruent. There's one arc on each of those. Also, we want to show that those lines are parallel with those angles, those arrows. So we want to, number 12, circle the diagram that models theorem 3.4, that we've got corresponding angles congruent. So the diagram that does it is this one. The one on the left is not corresponding angles. Okay, some more theorems that we're going to be talking about are theorems with the converse of the alternate interior angles theorem. If two lines and a transversal form alternate interior angles that are congruent, then the two lines are parallel. So that's one of them. If we have alternate interior angles congruent, then we have parallel lines. The next one is the converse of the same side interior angles. So if two lines and a transversal form same side interior angles that are supplementary, this time not congruent, supplementary, then the two lines are parallel. And the third one is the alternate exterior angles converse. If two lines and a transversal form alternate exterior angles that are congruent, then the two lines are parallel. So for number 13 here, we want to use theorem 3.5. So if angle 4 is congruent to, and so in this case, theorem 3.5 is alternate interior. So angle 4, I'm going to mark it in the diagram, is congruent with alternate interior to angle 8. So angle 8. Theorem 3.6, we want to use same side interior. So I'll use a different color. So angle 3, I'll put two arcs on that. Angle 3 and what angle is supplementary so that the lines are parallel? And that would be angle 8 again. Same side interior. 3.7 is alternate exterior. So alternate exterior with angle 1, so I'll put 3 arcs on angle 1. Actually, I could have put 2 because that's the same as angle 3. Alternate exterior would be way up here, angle 7. Okay. The next part of this is problem 1. So we're going to be identifying parallel lines. So the got it problem, which lines are parallel if angle 6 is congruent to angle 7? And we want to justify our answer. So angle 6 and angle 7 are congruent. So I'm going to put marks on them here, angle 6 and angle 7. And so the lines that are parallel go with that. So I'm going to kind of use a highlighter sort of effect here. So this line and this line, so line L and line M, are the lines that are parallel. So line L and line M is the got it answer. All right, so now let's answer the questions that were asked here. So underline the correct word to complete the sentence. So angle 6 is congruent to angle 7. Well, that's given. Angle 6 and angle 7 are on the same side. Angle 6 and angle 7 are corresponding angles. And I can use which theorem to prove that the lines are parallel? Theorem 3.4 is about the corresponding angles. Using angle 6 congruent to angle 7, lines L and M are parallel, and the transversal is line B. So that's the line that went here. All right, the next problem, we're going to write a flow proof. So this is kind of going to walk us through the flow chart proof. So given that angles 1 and 7 are congruent, we want to prove that angles 3 and 5 are congruent. So our given, we're going to write up here angle 1 congruent to angle 7. And why can we say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 here? Well, angles 1 and 3 are across from each other in an X, is what I like to say. So they are vertical. So you can say vertical angles are congruent. So if angle 1 is congruent to 7 and angle 1 is congruent to 3, then we can say angle 3 is congruent to 7, and that is transitive. Also, they give us the reason for the next step here to the right. The vertical angles are congruent again, and it goes with angle 7. So look at the diagram. Angle 5 is what is vertical with 7, so they're congruent. So therefore, we can say that angle 3 is congruent to angle 5, and that is again transitive with the previous two statements. Okay. The next problem is determining whether lines are parallel. So we're given that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, so we're going to mark that in our diagram. So angle 1 congruent to angle 2. You can use the converse of the alternate exterior angle theorem to prove that lines R and S are parallel. What is another way to explain why line R is parallel to line S? So we're going to justify each step. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's given. Angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. Well, angles 2 and 3 are vertical, so I'm going to put one arc on angle 3. So vertical angles are congruent. And then angle 1 congruent to angle 3 goes along with our transitive again. Number 17, angles 1 and 3 are corresponding angles. So what postulate or theorem can you now use to explain why R and S are parallel? So that would be the converse of the corresponding angles. Corresponding angles theorem. Okay, problem number 4. So we're going to use some algebra in this. What is the value of W for which lines C and D are parallel? So number 19, the marked angles are on the same side of the transversal. Number 20, by the corresponding angles theorem, if lines C and D are parallel, then the corresponding angles are congruent. So we're going to use the theorem to solve for W. So since those angles are congruent, and we should mark our parallels there with the arrows. Okay, if they're congruent, then they're equal measures. So we can say 3W minus 2 equals 55. Add 2, so 3W equals 57. Divide by 3, and W is 19. So we were just solving for W. All right, so we're going to check and make sure we understood what was going on in this lesson. So a classmate says that lines A, B, and DC are parallel based on the diagram at the right. Explain the error. So in 22, the segments that are the sides of angle D and angle C are all BC, DC, and DA. So circle the segments that are the sides. Explain your classmate's error. So one of the errors would be that the classmate identified the wrong pair of parallel sides, that the angles ADC and BCD are supplementary and same side interior. Transversal is segment DC. Line AD and line BC are parallel by the converse same side interior angles theorem. So there's many different correct answers there.